So, you ever ate lunch and you walk around and you're just smiling at everybody? Everybody smiles at you. And then like an hour, 2 hours later, somebody tells you, hey, Tommy, you have something on your teeth, you know? And it's like the most embarrassing thing because for the longest time, you've been walking around and you didn't know you have something in your teeth. You feel embarrassed, but you also feel a little upset because no one told you. And people have been seeing this in your teeth for the longest time. Now, what does this have to do with money and being poor? It's because I walked around broke for a very long time and no one told me, hey, Tommy, what you're doing isn't really that good. That is, until I read a book called The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by Edgar T. Harv. And that book was like that person, that friend that told me, hey, something's wrong, all right? You gotta fix this because where you're heading is somewhere I'm pretty sure you're not going to like how this whole picture actually ends up, okay? So in this video, my goal is to show you 5 things that I used to do that kept me poor for a long time, and I simply was just not aware of it, and everyone around me was doing the exact same thing, so they didn't correct me either, okay? So I got very lucky, extremely lucky, to actually be able to learn this stuff. So God is good, okay? And as always, guys, like this video on top, but also subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Now, number 1, guys, I used to think as long as I can afford the payments, it means I can afford to buy whatever it is I actually want to buy. Here's a good example, okay? I was in college. I needed a laptop for 2 reasons. 1, to edit my videos, and 2, to actually do like college stuff, okay? And this laptop, of course, it needed to be high-end. It needed to be brand new. It needed to be awesome. And that laptop I actually chose was basically a MacBook Pro. And it cost around, at that time, around $3,000. Can you guess how much money I had saved up? The answer is 0. My mom gave me $1,000, and on top of that, I got a credit card that gave me 12 months to pay it off interest-free. The math was simple, okay? I could not afford a $3,000 laptop, but I could afford $166 every single month. Or so I thought. Now, here's what happened here. The mistakes I've made. Number 1, I went into debt, and that started off my debt journey, which, by the way, made me a slave to the lender. It's not a good idea to actually do, okay? Number 2, it closed me off to other alternatives. There were so many good laptops for $1,000 out there, but no, it closed me off to this laptop, and because I could buy it, theoretically, right? Not really own it, I said, I just want that one. Number 3, I started to buy things I could not afford, and I could just basically make those payments. Now, here's what I should have done, okay? What I should have done was basically bought a laptop used for cash that could actually fulfill my necessity and do everything I needed it to do. Or number 2, okay, I could have just saved up extra money to buy that laptop later, okay, and not gone into instant gratification. Now, you want to know what actually happened with this whole laptop thing? I ended up selling the laptop when I actually paid it off. Like 12 months later, I actually was able to pay it off without paying a dime in interest, which I got very lucky because midway through, I lost my job, yo. And I could barely afford to get to school with the train, with the bus pass or whatever. And then I had this whole like payment to actually make. I was worried, I was scared, I was in trouble, okay? And that's really why you don't want to do things like that whatsoever. But when I sold the laptop, I sold it for nearly half of what I paid for it, okay? Because guess what? I bought something using money that wasn't mine, that was going to lose value. I took on a lot of risks, and I almost got burnt actually doing it, okay? So the answer is, if you can't afford to pay for something in cash, you can't afford it just because you can afford the payments. That goes for laptops, that goes for cars, all right? Number 2, guys, okay? I always bought things that went down in value, and I was okay with it. But whenever somebody told me about buying something that went up in value, I always felt like it would take too long. Here's what I mean, okay? Whenever I bought clothes, a phone, my sneaker collection. I always felt like I know it's gonna go down in value, but I get to use it now and enjoy it now, okay? But whenever you mention to me, for example, the stock and saying this is gonna take years to actually turn into something, the answer was that takes too long. I'm not really interested in it. I wanna make fast money, okay? The faster, the better. Now, here's the truth, okay? When I bought a phone, when I bought all these things, I lost money on nearly 80 to 90% of all of these purchases, okay? Because they go down in value. Now, what I actually should have done was I should have grabbed the money I was basically putting aside to buy these liabilities, and I should have bought assets with it, okay? Now, by the way, back in these days, okay, I was making around like $1,000, $2,000. I think I capped it at $3,000 or $4,000 while I was in college because I got some sweet deals sometimes, okay? It wasn't every single month, but some months I actually did very well by doing reselling and working 2-3 jobs at the same time, all right? Now, what it means is, okay, if I had said, you know what, I'm not gonna spend $500 every single month on trash, instead, I'm going to actually go ahead and invest it. And by the way, when you spend 500 bucks on trash, 1 year later, that $6,000 I spent in total turns into like around $1,000 or $2,000, okay? Basically lost a bunch of money. Now, if I would have grabbed that money, here's the math, okay? Math is super important. If I would have said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to invest that money, okay? If I would have invested 500 bucks a month times 12, a year, 6,000, and I would have done that for my whole college career, which by the way was like 4 years, less because I finished like faster or whatever, but in 4 years, I could have invested $24,000. Now, if I would have been making 10%, okay, 10% of that money, well, in reality, I would have graduated with a whopping $30,632 and about 6 cents. And that's a lot better. Now, do you actually want to know how I graduated? I graduated with over $20,000 in debt and a bunch of problems, okay? My point is, okay, if you're so eager to buy something and you're able and willing to buy something that actually turns into no money pretty soon, why not be willing to buy something that over time turns into more money, all right? That's the whole idea. Whether it's slow or faster, what you don't want to do is risk your capital, all right? That's the idea. So I made that mistake, and I hope you don't make it either. Now, number 3 is something I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one that did this, and most likely a lot of people watching this video also do it. I always thought about when it comes to saving money, to be able to save money, I gotta wait until I'm actually making more money, because right now I just don't have enough for saving. Now, I did this fun statistic here that kind of proved me wrong, because in reality I always said, well, I don't make enough to save because I know that because at the end of the month I don't have any money left over. That's called living paycheck to paycheck. And what I learned is when I look back at my earning history, when I was 10 years old, my mom gave me $2 to $5 per day to go to school, not college. I'm not a genius. And in reality, I had no money for saving. When I turned 11, I got a job working at a supermarket. I made $60 a day, and in a week I quit because I thought I was set for life, and I didn't save any money. I spent it all on video games, okay? When I turned 17, I think it was, I went to college. My mom gave me 10 bucks a day to go to college. Had no money for savings. I got a job, made 1,000 bucks. I had no money for savings. I had businesses while I was in college, okay? I had no money for savings, okay? The whole point is, every time I made more money, my expenses always went up along with my income. And that happens to absolutely everyone if you don't have any control over your money. So what's the solution here? The answer is, instead of waiting to make more money, to save money, what you really want to do is you want to save money the minute you actually get paid. That's it. That's the idea. So when I get paid, let's say $1,000 a month, instead of saying, well, I'm going to pay off all my bills first, whatever's left over, I'm going to save. The answer is no. I'm going to save first 10, 20% of this money, and then the rest I'm going to use it for my bills and my wants. And guess what? Usually you find out that you'll do just fine with that money, all right? So that's something I practice today, still to this day, okay? You save first, then you worry about expenses later. And by the way, obviously, you know that you need to pay your bills, you know what your bills are, and usually if your bills are like $800 a month and then you have $1,000 in income, the answer is you always have money to actually save. Even if it's like $1 or $5, but you usually use that money for nonsense and you don't really figure it out because by the end of the month, it's already too late. Now, number 4, guys, is when I was in college, all right, if you have no goals, like financial goals that are very specific for your money, it ends up going bad for you. You really want to have financial goals. And here's why, all right? When I was in college, at a certain point, once I learned how to save money, I saved up $10,000 in about 6 months or so. And this story doesn't have a good ending, all right? Because I didn't really have a purpose for that money. And in less than 2 months, I basically spent all that money. I think maybe in less than a month, potentially, okay? I spent all the money that it took me so long to actually save up, all right? Now, do you know why? It's because once you save up a lot of money, and that money doesn't have a reason for being there, just for savings cause, okay? In reality, you start to tell yourself, I deserve to buy myself something because I did such a good job, all right? I've told myself that story a few times before in the past. But what happens is you end up spending that money. So it's so important that what you actually do is this. When you're saving money, have a goal for that money. So these days, the plan is very simple. The goals are you pay off debt first. Second, save for emergencies. Third, invest while you save for buying a home, and then you keep investing forever, right? But even if you're trying to save, for example, for a new laptop, a new car, a vacation, or whatever it is, you want to label that money for that. That way, whenever you save money, it's not just for having money in the bank and feeling good about it, because that money eventually is going to be spent. And if you don't spend it, guess what? Something just happens in the world, and then you end up having to spend it for absolutely whatever the reason actually is. So you have to have specific goals for your money and reasons to why you're saving. If you don't have a why, usually that money leaves your hands pretty quickly. Now, number 5, and the final one here, I think I'm probably going to be the only person on the internet that's actually going to tell you this, because everyone goes against this. But overall, it's basically thinking that changing my mind is a sign of weakness, okay? Now, we live in a world where you deserve the best, or that's what people basically tell you, all right? And the best is usually the most expensive thing. Now, I love this story that I heard in this book about Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett walks into a store and he basically buys a pair of shoes, all right? And this pair of shoes is like an affordable pair, but there's obviously one that's more expensive and higher quality. And Warren Buffett says the price doesn't always equal quality. And that's actually very, very good as an example. So in life, I've had to reteach myself that what's more expensive doesn't mean it's the best thing for you, because the best thing for you is what makes financial sense for you in this kind of like idea of finance I'm actually talking about here in this video. So here are some things that I changed my mind on and that actually saved me a ton of money. 3 things to be specific, okay? So number 1, car. I wanted to buy a Cayenne Porsche. It was luxury. It is a nice car. I actually love those cars, but instead I bought a Toyota Prius for $9,000, all right? The car is a lot cheaper, more reliable, and it takes you from point A to B just as fast because there is a speed limit to actually follow. So in reality, I don't need that expensive car whatsoever, and the value of it goes down immensely. Now, these days, I would not ever buy a hybrid again. I would just buy a normal gas combustion engine because they're just a lot more reliable, a lot less headache, okay? And better when it comes to saving more money. Now, number 2 is house. When I was in New York, I was looking for a home that cost around $500,000 to $700,000. And I thought about, well, I'm gonna try to basically do this whole house hack thing here. I'm gonna live in the bottom, I'm gonna rent the top, I'm gonna leverage that, I'm gonna make some income from this, I'm gonna pay this and pay that. In reality, you end up making or taking a really good risk, you know, because if that person, if you have a few vacancies here and there and you can't afford to make those mortgage payments, you get in trouble very quickly, very fast. So what I did was I moved. I said, I'm willing to migrate from New York, go somewhere else and buy a cheaper home. I ended up buying a home for $130,000 somewhere else and being able to pay for it in cash. Some folks that live in New York, they say, I'm gonna go to Connecticut, I'm gonna go to Pennsylvania, I'll do this whole commute thing, and this is what I'm able to actually afford a home to actually pay it off a lot faster. Now, number 3 is, when it came to debt, I made a decision that I no longer wanted to actually play the whole debt game to maintain a credit score. I said, I'm just gonna be debt-free forever. This saved me a lot of friction, a lot of problems, and it actually is one of those things that kind of makes sure that I'm not gonna be poor, because, you know, you can only spend what you have. But when it comes to debt, you can always borrow more than you're actually able to pay most of the times. And that can land you in a very dark place. So overall, guys, these are 5 things that I did back in the day that were actually keeping me poor, but most people won't actually disagree unless they actually understand what it actually implies. But overall, I hope this video actually helps you in some way. Thanks for watching. Comment down below 5 so I know you made it all the way to the end. Either the number 5 or the letter 5. Letter 5. I mean, like the word 5 is a word, not a letter. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. As always, like, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified. Up here is another video. Over here is my face. Subscribe. And as always, long-term team officially out.